In this video, I'll demonstrate how to bind the ASPX scheduler to a Microsoft SQL Server backend. Start by creating a new website. Then drop the ASPX scheduler control onto the form. A message window will appear that tells you about the new template files added to the project. These template files are overwritten on each version update. Click Close after reading this message. Now, use the Control Smart tag to invoke the Data Source Configuration Wizard. Open the Appointments Data Source dropdown and select New Data Source. Now, select the database data source type to point to a SQL Server database. Since we have two data sources, it's useful to name them. For the appointments, I'll call it SQL Data Source App. Click OK. And now create a new connection to your local SQL Server's database. Specify the server name, database name, and authentication credentials. Finally, verify the connection by clicking the Test Connection button. Now, specify the fields you want to retrieve. In our case, we'll retrieve all the fields out of the car scheduling table. And because we want to be able to update the appointments, make sure you click the Advanced SQL Generation option and select Generate Insert, Update, and Delete statements. Now, we'll click Next and test the query to make sure we are getting our data. Finally, click Finish. Now, we'll go through the same steps to define the resources data source. Click on the Smart tag and select New Data Source under the Resources Data Source type. I'll set the ID for this data source to SQL Data Source Res, referring to resources. Because the tables are in the same back end, we can use the connection string from the previous data source. I'll retrieve all the fields from the cars table and then test the query. And finally, click Finish. Using the Smart tag, invoke the Mappings wizard. This will allow us to define the mappings used by the ASPX scheduler against the backend. First, we'll define the mappings for the appointments data source. The mapping wizard does a fairly good job in finding the relationship between the standard properties and data fields. Verify that the fields are correct and click Next. If there are any custom mappings, specify them here and click Finish. Now we'll verify that the mappings we just created are valid. Click the Check Mappings link in the Smart tag. If the mappings are correct, you'll get a message indicating that they have passed validation. Now, check the mappings for the resources data source. If anything is incorrect, please make your changes. Here, I'll remove the color and modify the resource ID and caption. Finally, check the mappings for the resources data source. Because the scheduler has a lot of information to show, you want to specify a width. Here, I'll specify 400 pixels for the width, and also set the height in Day View mode. To set the height in Day View mode, select Views, Day View, Styles, Scroll Area Height. I'll set it to 300 pixels. Now that we've finished our bindings and mappings, you'll see our appointments retrieved from the SQL Server database. Be sure to go to a day that you know has appointments. Thanks for watching, and thank you for choosing DevExpress.